Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with your host, Christina Nitchman.
This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our guest at the top of the hour is Marilyn O'Malley on living a turned-on, stress-free life. Marilyn has trained with John Ashcroft of The Secret and is a tapping success coach as well. Today, Marilyn will share her top tips and secrets for relieving stress in your life. Find out more about Marilyn at marilyno'malley.com. Our guest at the second half of our hour is Greg Dudzinski, licensed professional counselor, relationship and sex specialist, speaks on building meaningful relationships, both personally and in your business. Find out more about Greg and his practice at theartofrelationships.org. Hi, Marilyn. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you?
Good, Christina. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You betcha. I'm very happy to have you on. We're going to talk about some fascinating subjects today, one of which is going to be stress, or how to turn the stress off in your life and get a stress-free life, which is going to be awesome. But before we get started there, share with our audience a little bit about your journey of how you became a coach and what in particular drew you to the world of coaching.
Well, I have always, I'm a highly sensitive person, which means that I process information a lot differently than somebody who isn't highly sensitive. And I process it very deeply, and I feel things on very deep levels. So as a child and growing up, I could feel people's pain and suffering. And so I became a very good problem solver, because if I could heal their pain and suffering by helping them solve their problems, then I wouldn't feel it and I'd feel better. So a lot of highly sensitives don't know that that's what they're doing, end up doing. But so that sort of took me on a path of really, caring for people. I was interested in what made people tick and why they were feeling the things they were feeling, and also I had my own pain and suffering, and there was something inside of me that said there's something you can do about this and you don't know it yet. And so I went on a journey, and my journey started with being a body worker, and I like a holistic person. When holistic health was just starting, I was one of the people that helped start the holistic health program at John F. Kennedy University. And I actually went up there to study parapsychology, and they were too much in their head and not in their body. And I really had this sense that I needed to be in my body. And I used my intuition, and somebody turned me on to coaching, which I thought, like football coach, why should I be a football coach? And something said, go look up this site that she sent you. And I was deciding whether to go back to college and study psychology. And, I had studied a lot of that stuff already, but get the degree and be a therapist or something. And I like my freedom. I like freedom, independence, and I like to do a variety of things. I'm very creative. And so I went and I looked up this site after I had written down everything I was good at, everything that was of great interest to me, my talents, my skills, my curiosities, the things I was fascinated with. And I went and looked at this site, and I went, oh my God. I saw it was life coaching, and it was like I could do all of these things that I love: be creative, be intuitive, work in different areas, work with different things, So it was. So I said, all right. So next step, I found like the best school that there was, and then I said, all right, go to the first training and see if you like it. And I went, and I fell in love with it, and that was 13 years ago.
So it sounds like coaching has really allowed you to bring all the elements that you were first looking for, were not just working in the head, but bringing in the spirit and bringing in the body and combining it all together to use your also intuition, which is a great gift of yours.
Yes, 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 yes. So that the whole body, the mind, spirit, body, and and you got to work with a variety of people, and I got to help people, and I could keep learning. That's because I'm a master. I love mastering things. So I was contributing, and it had meaning to me, and then I could keep growing in it.
I love that aspect. That's one of the aspects I love about what I'm doing here on Savvy is continually learning from all the awesome guests that we have on, and they have so much wisdom to share with not only the audience, but I get to gander a little bit from it as well. Yeah, and so you've helped.
We need you.
Yeah, that we need each other. Yeah, and like what I really like is that all of us have grand gifts and talents that if we share it amongst each other, we can all make our lives better because it's not like everyone has all the answers.
Yes, no. Yeah, you're the connector.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So you help entrepreneurs live a turned-on, stress-free life. What exactly does this mean?
All right. Well, it's a little complicated. There's a lot there, but on the whole, so to me, living a turned-on life is living a life where you're not blocking yourself, you're not letting your limitations stop you. You're living with vitality and great life force. Like you can feel the energy moving through your body, the creativity, you're in relationship with spirit. You're in relationship with yourself. You're living more awake in the moment. And so that means for the entrepreneurs, helping them through that is like waking them up so that people get to learn and see what number one, where are they limiting themselves? Where are they thinking and feeling things that are not true about who they are? Because those are the things that cause the stress in our lives. It's the meaning that we're putting on situations. And so when we live in the past and we live in the future, we cannot be creating in this present moment. So a lot of what I do is like waking them up to, okay, here's where your blocks are, what we talked about before, right? So that they can see, oh, there are issues. There are things keeping me. It isn't that I'm not good enough or I'm not smart enough or I'm not worthy enough. It's like these blocks, these habits, these thoughts that I've been programmed to run my life on that are not authentically me, that are keeping me from living this life that I was born to live, that I came into the world living it fully awake, and we're not awake all the time, choosing, so we can be in choice. That's probably one of the biggest things is that teaching people that they have choice, teaching the entrepreneurs, you have a choice to be asleep or awake.
Yeah.
You have a choice to be happy or depressed or limit yourself or be expansive, and there's times to be contractive and there's times to be expansive.
This recalls for me is that when I left corporate a couple of years back, I think it's 3 or 4 years now, I first left, and of course, the first day I woke up to my new business, I was super present because it was all brand spanking new to me. Everything was new. I'm like, okay, now what? There's no one here to tell me what to do in my daily life. Once I started to look at what other entrepreneurs were doing, copying bits in here and there, and building a day of what it should look like, most of it on social media at first, and then making myself with busy work, I then began to get into the same rigmarole that I got into in the corporate world, where I was busy, and then on like a hamster wheel of new type of stress.
Right.
And then a couple of years later, check back last year, I got a nice consulting gig where I came into the city for the first time working with people outside of my house instead of being on the, just working on Skype and doing the show here, where now I'm in people's offices in a corporate environment, but now I'm a consultant. And it was like, it felt like the very first day I started my business. It felt very present. I was here and now, and I felt so alive. And I think that's what you're talking about a little bit.
Yes. Let's describe stress a little bit here so that people understand, because so stress, what happens is something triggers you. Something makes you think, it's going to be hard, or there's going to be some suffering in what it is that you do, whether you're going to have to work really hard, or you don't like what you're doing, or it's boring. There's something in there that you're not good at it, that just all these little things that come in. And so when you get, or somebody says something that triggers you, so these triggers, what happens then is it triggers a part of your brain that is called the reptilian brain, and the reptilian brain is the oldest part of our brain that's that fight or flight. And I'm going to add freeze to that too, because people relate to the freeze. So so it was there for danger. Watch out, there's danger. So every time that we sort of get triggered and it sends, it shoots up our cortisol levels, the brain starts, flashing, there's danger. And it gets our heart rate up. It gets all these, it puts us into this state of mind, and it flushes us with the cortisol and other things that are going on. So immediately, you either are a fighter, so that's like a doer. We go into mail. We like, okay, how can we push through this? What can we do? Blah, 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 and we keep it's like busy. It's like being busy. And it might be that you're busy, not on your business, but it's like, I'll do this after I clean my house. I can't do this while my house is dirty. Or I've got to make these phone calls. Or, it's like you'll do distraction stuff, but won't be working on the thing that's triggering you, because it might be, I can't do it perfect, so I'm not going to do it. So you'll procrastinate. Or you've got to approach somebody and you've got to have a conversation that you don't want to do, and you have never been allowed to ask for what you want and need and desire. And so it doesn't feel safe. So that, and so then you'll just go do. You'll go keep busy doing other things. Then there's the flight, and the flight is like, so that is like, you, all of a sudden you go numb and dumb. You're sort of like, it's like the energy's drained out of you. You can't think. You feel confused. You might go lay on the couch and watch a movie or listen to music, or then that's when you sort of go unconscious and you go on Facebook or Twitter or start looking at your emails. And it's just like this numbing. You're just avoiding what it is that you would really serve you. And then the freeze just means it's sort of the same thing, but freeze is just like you can't do anything. It's just like you just sit there and like you don't know whether to do A, B, or C, and so you don't do anything at all. And again, that might be going and laying on the couch, but it's just like you just can't think. And then what this does is it reinforces whatever it is your belief is around. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worthy. This is too hard. Whatever your internal beliefs are that you are believing. And so it validates that to you. And then it triggers yourself even more stressful, because you don't want to feel those feelings. Yeah. And so it hurts. And so now it's like you might go have a drink, you might go gamble, you might go have sex, you might start a fight, you might be into drama. Drama helps loosen that energy about us feeling bad. We got to create some energy, some anger, or some way to get rid of this energy that we're holding inside of us because it doesn't feel good. And so this becomes this vicious circle of stress. And so I think if people can see, like, you have control over your stress, at how you, again, once you become aware of it, you see how you operate and you see what your triggers are. You don't have to know all of them, but you can just start to feel like, you can start like, okay, I'm going numb and dumb. And then you can do some things. At the end of this, I'll give you a site that you can go to that has my YouTube site for stress reduction.
Yeah. Yeah,
so I don't want to do it now because I don't want people to go surfing while we're talking.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was going to ask you a little later on, what do you feel is like the number one thing that you could pass on as far as a lesson that you've learned with working with a number of people coaching wise?
for myself and for all of them is that we are enough. That whole, I would say, everybody write on your mirrors, I am enough. And that should be your mantra for the next year until you totally can embody that. Because when you don't think you're enough, a lot of us are living in shame and we're hiding out and we're feeling disconnected and we're angry and that gets us in fear and that gets us in stress. And it's not who we are.
Yeah. Now, where does this come from? This whole I'm not enoughness, as we spoke about before the interview, not being enough and not unworthiness and all this stuff. And I think a lot of it is very much generated in our culture in particular. Where does that come about? And also, if you are feeling that, if you have identified that, because I would guess that's the first place you have to begin, is to first identify, is that even something you're going through? But how do you even begin to disconnect from that and find your full self?
Yeah. Because it can be, really when you start realizing, I want to give people this information, that when you start to realize that you have control over your life and the direction your life takes. You know who taught me this? John Asseroff of The Secret. He was a mentor of mine he still is. I still watch his stuff, but I learned a lot about the brain and quantum physics and stuff from him when he was first starting out. It pissed me off so much when I found out that people know this information and they weren't sharing it. Why did people teach me that I am in control of my life through my thoughts and my feelings and the choices I make? Mm-hmm. That what I'm feeling was conditioned and programmed when I was a little kid. Mm-hmm. So all of us, whatever from utero to about between 7 and 9 years old, you're a sponge for the environment around you. So whatever is going on around you, whether you're put in front of a TV set and you have the media, whether you have alcoholic parents, whether there's tremendous fights, or what the most loving, generous people around you, and the combinations of everything in between. Whatever is happening, what happens in school, what happens with friends, what happens with family, what happens in religion, what your culture is like, no matter where you live in the world. Mm-hmm. All of that information you soak in like a sponge. And as a child, there's no here this goes in compartment A and this goes in compartment B and this is true and this isn't, let it go. It just is this jumble of information that comes in. And as a child, you sort of put it all together and form an image of yourself from this. Mm-hmm. And that's what you use as your basis moving forward when your consciousness does come in. And it's also our value is intertwined and mingled with the way that our family growing up deals with and believes about money.
Oh, that's a fascinating subject with our audience for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and this doesn't matter whether they had it, a lot of it, or a little. And it depends on, a lot of families that have a lot of it, there's a ton of control around the money. And a ton of control, and you're not good enough unless you behave the way I want you to behave, unless you do what I want. And so it's like you relate love to money. Mm-hmm. And so it's like if you don't get the money, or the family says, you know what, we're going to disinherit you if you do blah, 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 and not what we want you to do. It's like it's conditional love. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't, and so you don't feel worthy for other things in your life, because if your family is treating you that way, how are other people going to think of you, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we think. And then the other respects, so maybe families that didn't have a lot of money and there was a lot of arguing about it. And, or maybe like for me, my father didn't pay child support. He didn't support us that way. And so it's like, how could a father not support his daughter? What was wrong with me?
Yeah.
How am I broken? What did I not deserve? And so it was always, to me, again, and then here's another way that money is related to love. So, and this is fascinating too. I'm sort of just getting this, and for some reason I'm wanting to mention it. For a lot of women, you can't have money and love.
Now, that's just their idea of it. It's not the truth.
Yeah, no, it's not the truth. But But for a lot of them, like either or, the great career, or you have a lot of flow, you have a good relationship with, bringing in the money. But you can't find the man in your life.
Now, is that because of our cultural conditioning that the man has to be the breadwinner pretty much? And then if you are the breadwinner, you're going to turn off any men?
Well, and I would say it's also the opposite way too. So you can either have a great relationship and can't make money. Now, so it's part of it is our cultural conditioning, programming that men make more of the money. And this is all unconscious until you bring it to consciousness. Yeah. But I was like, I can't make as much money as a man because I'm not a man. Right? Men make the money. If you're brought up that way, it's like, well, women don't make money. And if you're brought up certain ways, that you will be taken care of, so you never grow up thinking that you have to make the money and then all of a sudden do. And then the other aspect is that a lot of women who do make a lot of money and who run their own businesses or who are the bosses at work or the CEOs are a lot of time in that masculine energy, and they're not in their feminine energy. So they're attracting feminine men.
Wow. That, I mean, I can not to the attracting feminine men bit, but to being in masculine energy. I had talked several months back to a CFO. He helps CFOs and businesses. And I had said that when I was in corporate, I was very much in the male energy. For one, I was in a managerial type of position, and most of the people in those ranks were men. So when I would deal with them at the boardroom and such, it's almost like in order to get taken seriously, I had to act and be like a man. So then now you come home and you're with your loved ones or you're with your husband or your boyfriend and you're acting like him. And he's like, wait a second, I don't like this. I wanted a woman at the show.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so having to shift that energy, and also, but a lot of what I do too is like, you don't have to be a man to be powerful. What does it mean to be a female who's in power? In her power. And when we're in our power, so we're not stressed out, if I go back to, how do we live the turned on life? Well, a turned on life is holistic. So it's like, what are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you drinking water? Are you moving your body? Are you having sex? Or stimulating those sexual energies in your body. Are you in your body? Down. What are you doing for mindfulness? Are you with friends? Do you have friends? Are you going out and having fun? What is the pleasure aspect of your life? So there's a great balance that has to occur to live that turned on life. Now, sometimes, it's going to go to one extreme when you're launching something, and then you have a rebalancing of that. There's not always balance. There's this yin yang energy that's going on, but it's not huge dips. It's not these huge highs and these huge lows. It's just a nice flow. And so then in that, you don't have the stresses. And in that, and when you're taking care of yourself and you're worthy, you take care of yourself first. Yes. You get that turned on energy, and you have that life that you're enjoying, that fuels you, and then that life force energy in you just expands and flows out to you. So you are just this wonderful model for others, or whatever you're doing in the world. So it's like you're a model for that turned on life for other people. And that makes you very charismatic. Yeah. So depending on what it is that you're doing in the world, it really helps you in a variety of ways. And you're in your power then. Whether you're masculine or feminine, you are in your power when you are taking care of yourself.
Yeah. And you had mentioned earlier on that for you, which has been a big guiding force that led you to coaching and such, as your intuition. Can people out there build their intuition? Is that something that could help them kick their limiting beliefs, their habits and actions to actually get themselves out of the slump and actually live a stress-free life that way?
Intuition, yes, you can grow and strengthen your intuition, and I would highly recommend that everybody do that. And to do that, though, again, is we have to go inward. So if we do our inward work, if we clear our limiting beliefs, if we take care of ourselves, mind, body, and spirit, then we're a clear channel for receiving intuition. We're a clear channel for receiving information and asking for information from source. So there's a whole, think of yourself as a radio station, a channel, or a tower. It's like you can send out energy and you can receive energy back in. So you can send questions out. What do I do next? So instead of that do in that fight, or spinning your wheels and feeling like you're a hamster on the wheel, instead of sitting quietly and so saying, okay, what would serve me? What action would best serve me next? And a lot of time I've gotten, go have tea at this place. And I've gone there and I've met somebody that, or go take a walk on the beach. It's not always like a slave over the computer for.
Yeah, I like that you really mentioned that, because I think that's one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs get into the trap of, if I just work more, if I just doing more, that alone will create better results. And I've done that in the past, and sometimes I get to the point where, I'm really being pushed inside that, no, you need to take a break and you need to go for a walk, or you need to go this. And as you said, sometimes those are the moments that maybe you don't go meet your client, end up seeing them in the park, but then your head gets clear and you're now able to come back and see solutions that you couldn't see just spinning your wheels here.
Right. Or you get them while you're, I get a ton of ideas and information while I'm walking the beach. That's where, and I take my phone with me. I don't usually like to do this, but because I like to be, energy clear in some ways, but my mind forgets by the time. And so I have a recorder, some way to record your downloads.
Yeah. And I know you said you had a wonderful resource you wanted to leave with our listeners as well.
Oh, yes. So if you go onto YouTube and you look up Marilyn O'Malley, you can look up Marilyn O'Malley and then type in tapping to stop overwhelm and the fight or flight stress response.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for sharing that. And please, before we head on out here, please let everyone know how they can contact you directly, find out more about you, work with you, and all that.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Christina. So you can find me at MarilynO'Malley.com, and that's MarilynO'Malley.com. And I have a newsletter that goes out. There's lots of YouTube. I'm getting ready to put on a training for healers. I have a huge amount of blogs. So there's lots of information to support what we just barely touched on today.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot more they could cover with you if they give you a call and find out more about you and come on your website too and find out more about you there. Do you have other resources such as videos and such they can check out?
Yep. There's a ton of them on YouTube, and I'm putting new stuff on there all the time. And again, that's under MarilynO'Malley.com. And also, I do a free consultation discovery session. So if anybody wants that, feel free to call me at 805-883-8598. See where you're at and help you get clear where you want to go.
That's fabulous. And discovery session is a perfect way to find out if you're a perfect match for each other.
Yes.
Before we head on out, some parting words you'd like to leave them with, some lesson you've learned or some tidbit you'd like to share of wisdom?
Well, again, you are enough and you are love. And I think if you can just get that and just make that your mantra, and also ask yourself, how can I love myself more right now? That's another thing. So I'm enough, and how can I love myself more right now?
Yeah.
And you are not meant to suffer, be under stress, so struggle.
Yeah. I love that, because the core there is love and understanding for yourself and understanding you are enough, and the fact that, hey, we were not put on this earth to struggle. I know that's a myth that we've, especially in our society, put forth, that in order to have anything great, you must struggle at great cost. And I totally think that is the one myth we need to bust. So again, Marilyn, I want to thank you for coming to Savvy Central Radio and sharing all your wisdom and gifts today.
Oh, thank you so much, Christina. I loved it. And thank you for being such a connector and sharing this information with people. And blessings to you, and you live your turned on life.
You too, girl. Thank you so much for coming to Savvy Central Radio.
All right. Thank you.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out more about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718 area code 713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business. Hi, Greg. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you today?
Hi, I am doing very well. And here I thought we were already being recorded. No,
No, we had a fabulous conversation before we got started here, and this is great for us to pull in a lot of the concepts we talked about before the interview here. But before we get started, I want you to share with the audience a little bit about your background as a therapist, how you came to working for couples, because we talked about before the importance of building meaningful relationships, not just for couples, but in business and in friendship. Share, though, a little bit about your background, how you came to working as a therapist.
Oh, absolutely. I've been, relationship sex therapist for quite a few years, about 14 years now. And I also, I did it probably from a lot of people aspects. You watch friends, different family members go through divorce or, abuse situations. And that sort of drove me into this field. I have a very blue collar background. And I did both. I worked for Chrysler for a long time and I did therapy too. On the side for a lot of years. And then I went into private practice years ago. And it was just my passion to help people and see, the dynamics about what's going on, all the hurt and that maybe affairs cause, divorces, how much it affects the kids, the family, each individuals, and how much it rips them apart emotionally. So I wanted to, it was my passion to try to help people in those situations. And I've have a lot of experience working with abused kids, sexual abuse, traumatized situations, watching dad or mom, unfortunately kill themselves in front of them. And I don't work with young kids anymore, but it's my passion to have dynamic relationships, loving relationships. And I don't care if you're married 20 years, 30 years. This is my pride, my ego at stake. I want people to be able to have greater connection emotionally, physically than even when they first started dating or when they first got married. And they look at me and they laugh and roll their eyes and then they see that, they feel it happening. And it's really cool. And that's basically the foundations of why I do this.
Wow. And I had a guest on earlier in the summer who was a masseuse, and he said it was interesting because he works, of course, doing massage work on people, but he said it was really interesting when he had one of his clients come back and say, hey, I was going to marriage counseling with my husband, decided, to add touch in the middle of our therapy session because we were screaming at each other, hollering and bickering, and we could not focus on the therapy section. And how do you start screaming someone and going off the cuff when you're actually having that physical contact? And he said it did a world of difference for their therapy, and they were able to start really listening to each other and working through issues because they had that small amount of touch added.
You know what, Christina? You should. If we had the cameras on, you could see my facial expressions when you brought this up. I got a huge smile and grin on my face when you brought that up. There's one thing I give during the first session. I don't waste a lot of time. I get at the issues right away, and touch is so huge. And I give them. I call it's an intimacy building exercise where they do those very things. And you have people that, depending how they were raised, they might not be used to touch. They might not be used to being held, hugged, whatever. They'll have sex. But the physical touch, the intimacy, and I tell people there's a difference between being touched sexually and then being touched sensually, soothing, caring, holding hands, caressing, somebody's hair, back, leg. I agree with that. And I think it builds so much closeness. And I'm a huge fan that, it's not only that the physical can also enhance the emotional connection between you two, just like you mentioned, the example you gave. So I'm a huge fan, and I love that. Yeah. It's just huge. I had one couple. It's like a hugging exercise. I give them. They can do it only for a couple minutes, whatever. It's no big deal. Mm-hmm. And the husband grew up very abusive, not hugged. So it was very uncomfortable for someone to hug him, even his wife. And he comes back and they're joking around. They're looking at each other. I'm laughing. They're laughing, joking around like little kids. And I'm like, no, you didn't, did you? And they look at me and he goes, yeah, we did. Well, he's hugging and he's counting to 10. 1, 2, to try to get rid of the discomfort he felt in doing that. Wow. So it was just a weird dynamic. And it was sort of funny and stuff too at the same time. And working at that, but it's weird. Everyone assumes relationships are supposed to be this way, this way, this way, and everybody's different. Every relationship is so different, and dealing with a lot of the mainstream. You're supposed to be husband and wife situations, and I deal with quite a few lesbian couples, and I deal with let's say they're in the lifestyle, they're swingers, bisexual couples. So I got some really cool stories to tell out there. But the epitome, when it comes down to it, is they all want to be loved. They all want to be desired and craved and feel important. And that's the premise that I go with couples as a whole, not only with couples, but also in family dynamics. If you don't feel important, it stinks. And in the business world, Christina, that the number one on any, and I hate surveys, I hate research, and the number one on anyone's research about the business, what is the number one job satisfaction thing? What is it? Ooh,
I don't know. What is it?
It's actually appreciation for the job you do. Money's like fourth, fifth. I mean, I'd like it up higher. But,
right.
It's believe it or not, it is appreciation for the work you do.
Yeah.
On anyone's research, the appreciation for the job you do and feeling appreciated and valued is number one.
Yeah.
On anyone's research on employee satisfaction.
Wow. That's really, really telling. And going back to what you were talking about, helping your couple through really establishing intimacy and real touch, not just sex, because
no, there's a difference. Absolutely.
Way big difference. And I had the greatest blessing a number of years back. 12 years ago. I went to a spiritual retreat and I didn't know what I was getting into. They even had us sign, release papers. I was like, what the hell am I signing this book worth of papers? Whoa, if I had known what I was getting involved in, I would have run the other direction. But part of what it was is a lot of psychological exercises built around intimacy, which I had no idea. And one of the first exercises they had us do is we would all close our eyes and people would make a long row of people on each side of us, and one person would go through the center of the two groups of people standing there, and you would let all these people on each side hug you with your eyes closed.
Freaky, isn't it?
Yeah, and me being a very uncomfortable personal person who only lets my closest friends hug me,
right,
it was the most uncomfortable thing, but I began to realize, wow, this is so beautiful. It was such a beautiful experience. And the other exercise that touched me is we had to stare into a stranger's eyes for 5 minutes, man, woman, whatever.
Yes.
And then that was so uncomfortable.
It gets so creepy, doesn't it?
It does. It gets creepy, but I realized that I began to see, like, you see this person in front of you. It's a man, woman, child, whatever. You don't know anything about them, but it's amazing how we build up these judgments or ideas about someone before we know anything about them. We just look at them, oh, you're fat and you're ugly or whatever. You make up snap decisions, some of them not so nice. But when you're looking into the soul of this person, you feel this instant connection as a human being that can't be broken. And all of a sudden you start to, I know about me, I started to feel a great sense of love for them. So it was such a tremendous experience. Share with our audience a little bit of your idea of intimacy and what it really means.
Intimacy is, I think you touched on it a lot. My definition of intimacy, and I think it sounds like I'm very familiar with Human Awareness Institute or project, I think, and they do a lot of those exercises as well. Mm-hmm. And intimacy is, in my definition, there's emotional, of course, and physical intimacy. And I think I try to get them both intertwined in relationships, okay? In romantic relationships. And, you don't want that in friendships, whatever, of course. But intimacy is, number one, is building emotional trust, that you are not going to throw up something that someone said 10 years ago. You are not going to, and with social media and everything, you love it, I love it because it helps us, advertise and promote our work. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people, when they air their dirty laundry and they, oh, so-and-so's a jerk, so-and-so did this to me, that kills emotional trust. And the number one thing I work on with building intimacy is recouping or trying to rebuild or repair that emotional trust that you have with one another, that you're not going to go out and bash one another with each other. And part of the intimacy also is that, you want to feel safe with that person, that you can, say, you know what, I don't feel loved, and they're not going to flip it around and flip that script around and throw it in your face and call you names and bash you for the way you feel. And I tell people the way you feel is the way you feel. It's so many people, it depends how we're raised, whatever. Oh, you shouldn't feel this way. How many people I've heard that? Oh, why do you feel that way? That's stupid. No, you feel what you feel. Now, what do we do with it? If you feel this way, how can we go ahead and change it? And when you get someone that really cares and wants to listen and hear that, you want to talk about intimacy on its probably deepest level. One thing with intimacy, I tell people one thing that builds emotional intimacy and physical intimacy, it's also probably the scariest thing. And part of it, you probably experience it too, is being vulnerable with each other. It's scary when you open up because, oh my God, they can use this against me. They can use this. They can hurt me with it. But I want you to be confident. And that's when we talked about, before we came on, that we talked about that you're okay with being human, that you make mistakes. We make mistakes. And if people use those against you, especially close relationships, you might want to rethink, do those people really deserve you in their life? Do you understand?
Yeah, and this doesn't just go with romantic relationships. If you're dating
no.
I mean, if
not
you're
at all.
if you have a business relationship or a friendship and you find that they're making you feel less than, is it a relationship you want to keep in your life? You have to examine that. Now, we also talked about the differences of how men and women are conditioned and their communication styles.
Yes.
Yeah, and how people can confuse, well, a man doesn't love me because all he does when I tell him my stuff is tell me how to fix it. Yeah, explain a little bit about the communication styles, not meaning that we're different as humans, but we might be conditioned or communicate a little differently.
No, I like that touch, Christina, and we talked about this, and you said you had an experience like this before, and being a woman, and oh my goodness, where you look at, and I like how you said condition. I agree. I think how we carry ourselves, we're taught how we, what a man is, what a woman is, but I mentioned about guys' way of showing empathy is usually wanting to fix things, right? I want to fix it. I want to make you feel better. And women typically are sitting there, I just want to vent. I want to veg. I just want to get it off my chest. And you just don't have to do anything. Just listen. And I teach women that, a guy is showing you empathy by wanting to fix it, right? And so I want women to learn that's how a guy shows empathy. However, and showing, if he didn't care about you, he wouldn't want to fix anything, right? So he cares. So I teach women that is how a guy typically, we all have exceptions, how a guy typically shows that he cares to do that. So I want women to learn that, but I also want men to understand and learn how their partner, how their wife, girlfriend wants you to be there for them, maybe just to listen or just, you know what? I get it, to understand, to try to get where she's coming from without trying to fix anything. So I want them both to learn from each other. Learn that a guy might be showing empathy this way, but, a woman might want this. And we talked about stereotypes. I'm not a big person on gender stereotypes issues, but this is one thing that tends to hold its ground, and it has for, years, centuries over that. So I try to get them. And that once you get that and understand, and I teach couple, with the intimacy aspect, to learn from each other. What do you want from me? And not bash. You know what? I want you to listen, not just, and stop, like you said, the yelling, the screaming, everything going on. When you try to learn from each other, oh my goodness, the anxiety, the anger, frustration drops. Now, what can we learn from each other, and how can I teach you in a way, you're going to get it?
Yeah, and understand my needs without feeling like I'm attacking you or something like that.
Big time. And how, I don't know, and that happens in friendships, family dynamics. It could be sibling dynamics. It happens all now if you learn from each other and not get so defensive. Sounds easy, right?
Sounds easy, yeah.
Sounds easy.
And we had a journalist on last year, and he said there's always not. You always say there's two sides to a story. He said I always say there's several sides to a story.
Absolutely.
And that's how it is in relationships too. Your perspective, the other person's perspective, maybe all the family members' combined perspective of a particular situation will all come into effect. And are you wrong? It's just your perspective.
No.
Yeah, go on.
That's awesome, Christine. I love that. That's awesome, and it's exactly what I promote. Is that even in the book I touched about that. You can be the learning aspect. She could have her perspective. You could have your perspective, and this goes from friendship, business relationships, anything, sibling, friendship. That you both could be right. It's not you get rid of the right and wrong situation and try to learn. You know what? I see your point of view, but I can still disagree, but I get where you're coming from, and you learn from each other instead of attacking one another. It would be a lot better world, but I guess that's my fantasy realm.
No, well, I mean, it's a doable thing bit by bit, because I had a boss back a number of years ago who used to talk really, really badly about women. He would say, "Oh, all women want is my money, and I take them out and they just use me." And I started to observe him because he would take our department out, if we hit the numbers or whatever, he'd take us out to lunch. And he was this type of guy, like, let's get some more drinks here. Everyone, you did a great job here. Let's get more drinks. And he would kind of just push stuff to kind of make it feel like, look, I'm being a provider. I'm being, that man who gives and provides, because most of the people in the department were women. And then later on, I was like, oh, all those people had so many drinks that they just were taking from me. And then I pointed out to him, I said, do you realize that you have this kind of insatiable need to try to prove you're the quote unquote man by pouring stuff at people and then feeling like they took from you? Maybe instead of blaming all women, you should examine your actions and why are you doing what you're doing? What does that mean for you? So, it's something behind that, because we all grow up with different experiences. And I think, like, when you were saying gender differences and stuff,
right.
I think a lot of it is conditioned, because, like, men, we're told as men that you go out there and you provide for women. If it's a date, you're supposed to pay for it, and you're supposed to do this, that, and the other. And the woman's like, oh, I'm supposed to get dolled up and you're supposed to pay for my dinner.
No,
yeah. Like, where's that come from?
I've done on my own radio show. I talk about this and all this stuff about the gender stereotypes big time. And, women, they want this. Men, are supposed to do this in roles. And it's like, where do these come from? It's 2000. Well, now it's 2016. And what would it take to learn from each other? And where do they come that's right to do that? But if you, as you know, when you challenge those, Christina, how many people sort of get nervous, they get defensive and all this stuff? What did your boss do in that situation? Was he able to look at himself?
Well, actually, he saw it as all the problem of the women. But I was trying to point out to him that, everyone in the table in our department that you took out, you were pouring all these little treats, drinks and desserts.
Absolutely.
And saying, hey, get them dessert. They did an awesome job. But then you felt used at the end. So why are you doing that to yourself when you don't want to give beyond a certain point?
No.
So I said to him, maybe the thing for you to do is really look at, why am I having the need to do what I do? And I think the reason why is because he probably grew up in a household that really made it seem like the man has to be the super big provider to be a decent and worthy man.
Do you agree with that?
No, of course not. I think it's absolutely crazy.
I'm putting you on the spot now. Yeah.
No.
I agree. I don't agree with that either. And I know with the economic times out there now, it's very difficult for a lot of people out there. And it's I get, how do you work together as a partnership? And this is business, relationship wise. What does it take that you both feel needed, appreciated? Not so much in the business, but loved and important. And how do you blend them together with your own individual needs? And I think a lot of things, you talk about intimacy aspects. So many people, I think they'll go into it and they want that other person. They have all these expectations on what intimacy is. And if we don't fit those needs, oh my goodness, then we're in trouble. You're not this way, you're not this way. And I think it's huge that you maintain your own individuality and try to fit expectations together and try to weave them together if you can, instead of trying to force them down each other's throats.
Yeah. And this is really a good topic because a lot of our listeners, this has primarily been the show, but a lot of the listeners, and we said this before the conversation, that really what goes on in your marriage or in your personal life or, relationships, romantic wise, affect all parts of your life. I mean, they're all interconnected. So if you're having issues with dealing with your husband, wife, or significant other, that is going to cross into your other relationships, business, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's very important to get a handle on what's not working here so that I don't repeat it in, say, my business relationships.
No, it's very difficult. And you heard the adage about trying to leave everything at the office, right? And a lot of people have a hard time doing that. And when they come back and they're ticked off, upset, had a bad day at work, what happens? And it's, who do you take it out on? Your family members. And it's the same thing. If you're going through, say, a divorce, or you found out, your spouse had an affair, or maybe you had an affair and your, wife or, husband found out you had this, what is that going to affect when you go into work with the coworkers and everything? And, how do you balance it? I mean, it's tough. It's not easy. And how do you leave it at home and not affect your work life, your coworkers, and all those situations, Christine? And I'm sure, I've experienced, oh my God, in my life, a ton of this in different workplaces, and I'm sure you have too. And they, how do you be able to balance it too? How do you let that go? And I guess that's why I'm in business with counselors, EAP, employee assistance plans. They try to help work that workplace balance. And it's very, very difficult to try to separate the two. Do you find in your experience, Christina, that women or men have a harder time doing that?
I think women, because they take it all so personally and emotionally that it's all an affront against them. And it's interesting. I'm so glad we're doing this topic because quite a few folks who are either listeners or past guests have told me I've gone through a difficult divorce and and they're so bent on the emotional turmoil I've gone through. And what's sad about hearing some of their stories is it's all about what was done to them. And not how they played a bit of a part in it. And now maybe they're just not ready to see that, but nothing just happens. If it's a couple relationship, business partner relationship, it didn't just happen to you. This is something that you both came to the table together and created this awful stew or whatever. And I'm hoping along the road that some of these people who've told me some of these awful stories will begin to see that I played a part. It was bad. And let's just move on. Take the lessons learned, as we talked about in the beginning of our call together, that, I always say to my guests and listeners, what is the greatest lesson you've learned and how have you applied and such? And I think that is what will benefit us. If, you've had a bad relationship at work or with your husband, look at what parts you could have done better or not done the next time around so that you can have a more healthy relationship going forward.
Thank you, Christina. Boy, we're on the same page. You're an intelligent lady. Or person, should I say.
Thank you.
And I get this, and with affairs, and those wreak havoc on a lot of people, and I'll ask going in the first session, I will ask couple when there's an affair, I want to know why it happened. Was there genuine remorse and guilt? And is there a recommitment to rebuild the trust and the relationship going on? And the one thing, the number one thing I am, why did it happen? Because if you don't know why it happened, there's nothing we can work on, right?
Yeah. And that is the crusp of every probably issue on the planet. No, seriously. Individual and country and nation and state and that each of us say, okay, what is our part in this and how do we want to do it so that we make the world a better place?
And accountability, that's a big thing with any relationships, politicians and everything else, is accountability. And how do you hold yourself accountable when you're not going to? You get your wrist slapped or whatever. I was listening on the radio today about accountability, and it's funny how if you or I were on a witness stand. I've been on a witness stand more times and we lied. We're going to jail, perjury. But it's funny when politicians or whoever lie on the witness stand, nothing happens to them. And that's a whole nother topic. But
yeah,
when you going back, the relationship dynamics, when you start taking accountability for your actions and you stop blaming each other. And you know what? It was my bad. I did this, and I relate it to when you're little kids, and you have two sisters, two brothers, brother, sister, it doesn't matter. And it's like, why'd you punch your sister? She made me, right? And we need to be accountable for our own actions and what we do. If you you get mad, angry, ticked off at me, and I start calling you names back and forth. And I mean, I get it all the time in my office. And I try to look at what can you learn? Okay, if they're mad, can you take responsibility? Okay, what did I do to make you mad? Do you think that would calm that person down? And look at, you know what? Oh, they care. They get it. And if you took responsibility and look at, okay, is it, self-esteem issues, why we can't do that? We're trying to put on these facades, these, fake masks that we're putting on this image for everybody else instead of being comfortable with who we are. They're afraid that it's going to get shattered, and you need to sort of mellow that out and be okay with being human.
Yeah. And we did talk about the authenticity and how people really want to connect with someone they feel has been just like them. You made a mistake, you learned from it, and you moved on. But it's interesting when it comes to that we have allowed it in certain areas in our life that we allow, say, non-authenticity to be okay. So I think if we all, as people in all parts of our life, say, okay, this is how I'm going to take personal responsibility with my husband, my kids, politically, because, everything's interconnected, as we said.
Absolutely.
So if we all took our own part in it, I could totally see change happening.
Wouldn't that be cool? But I would love that. And I wish people would check themselves enough.
Yeah. Well, my partner does say I'm a little idealistic, but
I love your idealistic. I'm the same way. Now we have to look at what do we do about changing those. And, right now we can only work on ourselves and hopefully, with our relationships and try to look at, what we can do to maybe take more accountability and look at how our actions and how our partners and, loved ones, how we make them, feel and what we're doing, maybe make them feel more insecure, make them feel angry, disconnected with us, with the intimacy, and what we can do to rebuild that instead of putting on, if you do this, then I'll do that. You need to stop that tit for tat game and look at what you can do to take that action, bridge those intimacy gaps.
Yeah, that is a really good point because we can always point the finger and say this, that, and the other. But really, as you said, accountability for one. And then number two, and my partner always says, everyone just came from a perspective of first, personal accountability for myself and responsibility. But then number two, always we're thinking about serving and giving. If everyone on the planet did that and took their part in it, this would be the most awesomest world in the universe.
Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah. I would love that.
Well, before we head on out, I want everyone to know where they can find out more about you, Greg, get in contact with you, work with you. Yes.
Oh, awesome. I'm Greg Dudzinski. How you spell that is Dudzinski. You can find me on Facebook. Also, my website is www.theartofrelationships.org. I have a book that just came out, Seize That Total Connection, on Amazon. It's romantic relationships, I'll put it that way. But it helps a lot of singles out there to look at themselves and make changes for themselves instead of relying on other people as well. And I also do a radio show every Wednesday evening at 9 p.m., the Art of Relationships radio show. So it's live. People can call in and join me on live chat as well. So I definitely thank you so much for letting me plug those, Christina.
You betcha. Well, it's been such a fascinating talk. I know we could have gone on for hours, but but we're going to close out for today. But again, I want to thank you for coming to Savvy Central Radio and sharing your gifts and wisdom today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Christina, and I will definitely plug Savvy Central Radio. Actually, I did on Facebook already before.
I saw that. Thank you so much.
So I appreciate it. No, I appreciate it. I'm all about helping other people. So thank you so much, and you take care.
Carlene Pettit, author of Flight to Success. Be the captain of your life. Inspiration, motivation, and lessons learned. Flight to Success is her journey through 8 airlines, 7 type ratings, 2 master degrees, and motherhood. Flight to Success, intertwined with her stories, are those of others who share their successes, failures, loss, fears, hopes, and dreams. The secrets correlate with many aspects of flight. If you apply the tips in Flight to Success to your daily life, there is nothing you cannot accomplish. To find out more and get your copy today, visit CarlenePettit, PETITT.com.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out more about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, call 718 area code 713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business.